Hello everyone. So today, given that it has just come out now, I'm going to be talking about Greedfall, and given that, again, it has just come out, this is going to be a bit more of a rambling video as opposed to the more scripted content I would normally do. Because, of course, I haven't had enough time to fully, complete the game or see everything it has to offer, but I have seen enough to give a good idea of what I think of the game and, how it works and my thoughts on it, opinions, you get the idea. So it will be sort of just me saying what comes to my head as I think about the game and share my impressions of it with you. And as I'm already starting to sort of ramble through the intro, I think it'd be a good time to, get into the actual video now. So, one of the first things that comes to mind when thinking about Greedfall for me is how much and how often it's been compared to a BioWare game, say the ones of old like Mass Effect or Dragon Age, which, given all the comparisons to Dragon Age specifically, I am remiss that I have not played it yet. But maybe get on that now. But again, I can still see the comparisons, the deep, interesting companions and the system that follows them, the unique and intriguing factions, the segmented world, the excellent RPG elements, the amazing stories, all that great BioWare stuff. But I think that Greedfall also does a lot to distinguish itself and apply these elements that are very BioWare-esque in its own unique way that, again, distinguishes itself. Like the companion system, having a mechanic where I believe if you leave a companion story off for long enough, they will actually leave. Which is, of course, a great incentive to keep people playing those stories and seeing those narratives, learning about the companions, learning about their factions to, avoid losing all your companions and having to, take on the game alone, because that would suck. But I just think that is really a good mechanic. Another thing that's really good that Greedfall does, it's not something that's very BioWare-esque. Having a segmented world is not exclusive to BioWare games, but it's something that they definitely did very well, and something that Greedfall, I think, does very well, because it uses it to make strong distinguishing elements between each of the different areas. There's swamps, there's big cities, and each of those cities is unique, and there's plains, and there's forests, and there's everything imaginable. But one thing that I noticed that I really appreciate is how it distinguishes them not just visually, but with the background music it has. Because each area has its own music, I believe. And what this does is that even in areas that are visually similar in a lot of ways, say the native villages, which use a lot of the same textures, same assets, have similar architecture, you might not be able to tell them apart just jumping between them consistently. But with each one having its own background soundtrack, that allows them to be easily distinguishable. Not necessarily to be able to place a name on them, but to be able to tell you're in, say, the village in the north as opposed to the one in the west, just to throw that out as an example. And I think that that's just a quality it's nothing huge, but it's something that I think is still notable for how it lends itself to the game flowing in a very nice way. And another thing that I think aids to this is actually the abilities system, because of how it's done in Greedfall, which is nothing I've seen before. It's really one of the things that's most amazed me in Greedfall, is the ability system, because of how it, for one thing, is just really good in the areas where it gives you a lot of freedom, like the combat skills, where you've got, straight combat, you've got magic, you've got utilities like firearms, traps, more niche stuff like that. But you can freely allocate points to these however you want and progress through the skill trees. Even if you start with, say, the warrior class, you're not limited to not using magic or firearms or traps, right? You can use anything you want, which just means that you decide the player, the base class when you start, and it makes it have less of an impact, but I don't think that that's a bad thing because of the amount of player freedom you get from this extreme fluidity in the skill trees. But another thing that lends to this player freedom, I think, is how skills are actually separated into different kind of subclasses. So you have the combat skills, which are entirely their own thing. You have attributes or something, whatever they're called, that govern things like charisma, lockpicking, crafting, perception, stuff like that, that each govern a different element. Some things like charisma and perception can be used for skill checks in dialogues. Lockpicking is, of course, to pick locks. And the other ones do their own thing, I don't remember. But what's really nice about this is how you use different skill points for each of these domains of skills. So you're no longer limited to being a very talented warrior, but at the cost of just being terrible in dialogues, missing out on so much additional details about, say, a quest or a different character, or just being able to avoid combat sometimes when you just don't feel like it. And I think that that's something, it lends to player freedom, and it's also done in a way that doesn't make the game super easy, because you can just level everything constantly and all of a sudden be extremely good with a sword and lockpicking and dialogue and everything you can imagine, because it handles skill points through each tree differently, and they're given at different levels. And I think that's just it's an excellent system that I've never seen done before. It's one of my favorite implementations of a skill system, I think. But another thing I want to say that lends to this player freedom is the customization system of gear, which it's not entirely unique. I've seen it done mostly with weapons before, where you can upgrade, say, your magazine, your stock, your muzzle on your assault rifle or something, say, in what comes to mind is the reboot Tomb Raider games. I believe had that system. But Greedfall applies it to armor, which I'm sure has probably been done at some point, but I haven't seen done before, so it interests me, at least. But I think it's really cool because each piece of gear has a few slots where you can add something that'll adjust. Usually it's just armor or damage, or maybe a specific class of damage, or balance, which adjusts your ability to avoid being stunned or thrown to the ground. And then they're done in a tier of your level of crafting. But some of these adjust things like giving you a skill point in charisma or lockpicking, or adjusting the loot chance and, magic, poison, flame resistances, stuff like that. But I think it's just nice because it allows you to truly personalize the gear you have to be exactly what you want to fit your very unique character class that you've made exactly the way you want. And I think that's something that it's definitely been done before, but it's not been done in this way that I think is very efficient and very good. Now, I'm thinking now when it comes to the stories in Greedfall, I would like to kind of brush over that area for now, because that would be spoiling the game very soon after its launch, and I wouldn't want to do that. So, I think I will say is that they are very good, they're very worth playing through, they're very worth enjoying, and I would say they're worth buying the game for, maybe just for them, if not just for every other amazing part of the game that I think is amazing, as I've said. But I think with that, all the praising and stuff, because I think it's a good game and everything, I think I'm going to wrap up now, but I do hope you have enjoyed. If you did, like, subscribe, all the usual stuff. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.